Alright guys, and now we're back with a showdown between the Dark Elves, who shall be led by MORATHI, the Wood Elves, who are going to be helmed by a Glady atop her Great Eagle. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Glady is the female Glade Lord that the Wood Elves have access to, and she does have that really good ability, the Prey of Warhammer, which is a single target snare, and it does also lower missile resist. Anyways, for my Dark Elf army here on the front line, we do have a combination of the Bleak Swords and the Dread Spears, and against Wood Elves, you don't really need like heavy hitting infantry, you don't need Harkonneth or, the Black Guard in my opinion, because you're usually just going to see like Eternal Guard and maybe Dryads. I mean, Dryads can trade pretty efficiently with these troops, but for the most part, it's not going to be so punishing that you need to upgrade to elite troops. As such, we do have a couple Dread Spears that are going to be in the middle and on the flanks, and yeah, usually people, are going to be using their cav on the outside of the battlefield, coming in, trying to get into the back line, so having the Spears to be able to kind of fan them out and screen, or fall back to the back line and help out your Shades or other units like that, I think is a little bit more optimal. On top of that, we're going to be going with 3 groups of the Blackheart Corsairs with the handbows, just trying these guys out, and I feel like if someone went very heavy with War Dancers or with Dryads and a very aggressive style of Wood Elf play, these guys are going to be able to pick them apart pretty efficiently, and on top of that, they have pretty good armor and decent melee stats, so if they had to fight in melee, they would be okay. So we do have 3 groups of the Blackheart Corsairs, going to see how they do, and yeah, Hellebroni in the middle as well. The Hellebroni, the chillest of all the bros in the realm, but these guys are pretty good. They have anti-large, of course, and they also have poison and 53 melee defense, which is definitely no joke. We're also going to be trying some very heavy metal cav. We have 2 groups of the Cold One Dread Knights. So Dread Knights are a pretty cool cav unit. It really does suck that they rampage, because especially against Wood Elves, because they can rampage into spears and other targets like that, but typically, the Wood Elves have a lot of trouble with heavy cav simply because they're often shielded, heavily armored, and Wild Riders, their own cav unit, are, they don't have the best armor-piercing value. So the Cold One Dread Knight's going to be pretty dominant in regards to the cav fight if they just fight head-up against Wild Riders, but we're going to see how these bad boys do. So 2 groups of Shades as well. So just in case the sneaky one over here, Professor Pone, I had a feeling he might go with like a mass Treekin build and come in with like Durthu and Treeman and like Treekin and just kind of like totally subvert my expectations. As such, I did bring 2 groups of the Shades, thinking, hey, I'm going to bring some armor-piercing bows, and worst case, these guys have stock. They're not going to be seen by the Wood Elf missiles. I could scoot forward and maybe get the jump on some of his own missiles, snipe out his Lord. So they're not completely useless, so, if there are no trees. So we do have 2 groups of the Shades here. We're going to see how they do. MORATHI up in the sky is just so damn good. Anti-large, armor-piercing, really good against Wood Elf Lord. She can chase them. She has really good offensive spells with the Soul Stealer and the Wand of Coridon, I think is what it's called, but nonetheless, MORATHI is a very good pick in, a ton of matchups. She's just so good. Over here on the flanks for Professor Pone, let's take a look at the Wood Elf army. 2 groups of the Glade Riders with the Hagbane Tips. 2 sneaky Wild Riders over here in the Shadow Realm. So if he's able to kind of catch my Cold One Dread Knights with some spears and I get a little bit overconfident, he could get a pretty good little rear charge and sandwich me in here. Aside from that, front line of the Eternal Guard, I don't think he has a Winterheart Guard. It's going to be standard Eternal Guard here. A couple groups of the Deepwood Scouts, maybe in case I went with like, Sisters of the Slaughter or Witch Elves, things like that. And even against my own missiles, like Dark Shards and Shades, they're going to be, pretty decent. So he does have the Swift Shiver Shards and Starfire Shafts in here in the back with the Glade Lord, which is going to give him some extra AP against those guys. He does have a Branch Wraith with Earthblood, a Pendulum, and it looks like Malkost mystifying spooky stuff, and the Prey of Anathrama up in the skies. In the back, he does have the Loix Tricksters hiding them in the shadows, so I'm going to think the back line's open, and these guys could pop out and do some work. So on that note, guys, let's have some fun and get this battle underway. And my apologies, I'm having really bad allergies right now, so it's a little bit tough to cast, but I'm going to do my best. Anyways, you can see the Arrow of Kernus coming in and doing huge damage against the Blackheart Corsairs. In the front line, we're going to have the Wet Noodle contest of all Wet Noodle contests, the Eternal Guard fighting against the Hellebroni. I will definitely have the advantage here, considering these guys are RORs and are pretty beefy, and it looks like Professor Pone is going to be getting a Pendulum effect right down the formation of my Bleak Swords, definitely helping out his flank engagement. MORATHI's going to be flying in as well, looking for an opportunity. A nice Prey of Anathrama going down on the Dread Knights over here, slowing their charge into the back line. My other Dread Knights, I was pushing back here, but I was like, I'm just going to kind of nibble on the flank of these Eternal Guard and try and get some free damage. And then from there, I'm going to kind of pop into the back line and see how it goes. Now, they're not going to take much damage from Glade Riders with Hagbane Tips. Very low AP on these guys, so I'm relatively safe in that respect. Now, the Shades have popped out, and the Shades are actually doing a ton of damage, just getting massive, free volleys into the Deepwood Scouts, so really taking advantage of their stock ability, and they've already taken these guys down to like 30-40%, so very good value from the Shades so far, which is kind of an unorthodox pick, I would say, in the Wood Elf matchup, but they are tearing these guys apart. Now, in the back line, the Dread Knights are about to get into the cookie jar, so what I do is I screen out the Loix Tricksters here with the Dread Spears, and that's going to free up a rear charge here with the Cold One Dread Knight. So I charge into the back of the front line formation. That's going to do some pretty huge damage. The Dread Knights hit very hard with 48 missile damage, or not missile damage, but weapon strength, and should be pretty happy about that. Now, the bounce power is actually a little bit in the favor of Professor Pone. He's done some pretty decent damage in regards to the infantry fight, and he has also caught out the Cold One Dread Knights, getting a very good Malkost, but he does have to engage him with the Glade Riders to protect his back line, which is a bold strategy, Cotton, but it's working out a little bit because of the magic support, and now he's going to rampage me. So even if these guys get wiped out, which they probably will, or at the very least they'll have a bad situation, he's now rampaged my Cold One Dread Knights, and they're not really going to be going where I want them to go, which is on top of the missile units in the back line. Dreadspears are pushing up right here, and the Wood Elf Wild Riders trying to kind of pin those guys, buy some time for the missiles, but he should definitely pull back from this engagement pretty quickly. But I have gotten my Blackheart Corsairs up and around the flanks, and there's just a heavy barrage of missile fire exchanging here. Morathi up in the sky, being a little bit careful because I don't want to get pinned and prayed and just have all kinds of bad stuff happen. As far as Morathi's HP, she's pretty healthy, about 60-70% give or take. And Professor Pone's actually using the Glade Riders with Hagbane tips to a pretty good effect, just kind of cycle charging infantry and using them as a bit of a roadblock. Now, in the back, things are getting a little bit messy, that Wild Rider group. So we did have 2 in total. He had one over here and one kind of crept around the back and got into my shades and is starting to do some pretty good damage. He was very patient with this, so I didn't really see it coming. But thankfully, I do have some troops nearby that are rampaging, and it just so happens that the Wild Riders here are going to be the closest target. So the Wild Riders are going to get rampaged on, although it looks like they might be rampaging on the Branch Wraiths. And the Hellebroni, having won their frontline engagement, will now be falling back, and hopefully we can finish off these Wild Riders. They're doing some really good damage to the Shades, which is definitely not fun. In the meantime, the Loyal Tricksters are chasing me off. You can see they're going to be chasing the Blackheart Corsairs. And it looks like the Glade Riders with Hagbane tips are going to be going in pretty balls deep here, just getting a very aggressive charge, but the Corsairs should be able to beat them down in melee pretty badly. The Hagbane tips, they only have 15 armor, and the Corsairs, like I said, have pretty good offensive stats. So if we take a big look at the battlefield, this is really going to be a pretty important fight back here. We do, of course, have my Dread Knights fighting. There's some Wild Riders, and just kind of through sheer numbers, plus the support of a Branch Wraith, which is going to be giving them the Call of the Wild. Let's see if he has it. He does. So they're going to be getting extra melee attack. Coming in here, getting, pretty crunk on these guys. But I do also have my Shades fighting. I have Spears fighting. Morathi's in here as well with her Deadly Onslaught. She also has Anti-Large. And this is a really, really good target for the for the Soul Stealer. Now, the bounce power a little bit in Professor Pone's favor, certainly in an advantageous position. But, it's certainly far from over. We're going to be dropping a Soul Stealer right here on top of the Wild Riders, and it hits everything. It hits the Branch Wraith, it hits the Wild Riders, it hits these guys. And the Shades, pretty powerful in melee. Those guys have combat stats, I think, in like the 30s or 40s in regards to their offensive stats. And Hellebroni with the poison, able to just annihilate those Wild Riders. And you can see those guys are going to be shattering and running to the hills. And from here, we bounce over here and also get some really good value on the Branch Wraith. So Big Mama Morathi just coming in with a steel chair, doing beautiful work, able to just pick apart that formation with her magic, and also lend her bonus for large, which was very useful. Over here, the female Glade Lord is going to be jumping. Well, I guess it's just the only Glade Lord. So the Glade Lord's going to be jumping down here on top of the Shades, doing some pretty good damage against her light armor. But the Shades, like I said, melee attack in the 40s, able to kind of fend her off. And she's going to be taking some Overwatch fire from the Blackheart Corsairs, as well as these Shades right here. So definitely not a bad situation. And the bounce power has kind of ebbed into my favor here. In the back line, the Blackheart Corsairs are kiting and shooting, slowly able to pick apart these, relatively expensive Loix Tricksters. So quite happy about the performance of the Blackheart Corsairs. Although in the end, they'll probably get chased off the battlefield. They're certainly paying their dues. We're going to be dropping the Wand of Crydon right here on the Glade Lord. It is a bit of a swing and a miss, and it actually wasn't moving, so I'm not sure how that missed anyways, but a very, very good pendulum from Professor Pone. Does tear down my formation, hitting the Shades, and yeah, both groups of those guys, but did I have 3? I thought I had 3 Shades for a second. I was like, oh, that's pretty sweet. But it's just going to be the Blackheart Corsairs and the Shades right there, and then the second group of Shades here. So now that the front line of the Wood Elves has kind of buckled under the pressure of just the flanking from the Coldwind Dread Knights, and the, just winning that engagement over here was really, really big. The Hellebroni and the Dread Spears are going to be forcing their way into the back line, and this is a tough situation for the Wood Elves. He's relatively low on ammunition as is, but I have silver shields across the board. Silver, silver. These guys do have bronze, but of course, having that really good armor is going to be super good against these Swift Shiver Shards, which don't have the best armor piercing values. And these Dread Knights are just going to be going to town on these very lightly armored Wood Elf Cav. But yeah, it was definitely quite a bit of fun using these guys this game. The Coldwind Dread Knights, did okay in regards to kills. They have 120 armor, so they are going to be very tough for things like Wild Riders to kill. But the Rampage really, really is punishing with those guys, especially if the Wood Elf player is able to snare them down, use a little bit of magic to kind of soften them up, and get a couple of volleys. Like, they could Rampage very, very quickly, which is tough. Let's actually go ahead and take a look. So hit points drop below 50%. They're going to be rampaging, which is definitely not the funnest situation. So in the back line, the Dread Spears and the Hellebroni and the Corsairs are going to be scooting back, and I definitely have liked the Corsairs as well. They're fairly heavily armored, pretty durable against infantry. They can kite War Dancers, they can kite the Azrai Spears, get some really good value there. So I felt pretty happy about their performance, but Morathi was just the MVP. Coming in with that Soul Stealer, her bonus versus large, she was able to do so much work to those formations, and just kind of her ability to stick and move. And the Wood Elves do have a lot of quick, large targets, like the Glady is an example. Even though the Branch Wraith isn't large, Morathi is very good at assassinating characters like that. She's a very powerful character. I certainly think she's probably a little bit better than Malekith in this matchup, although one of the more optimal choices might be the Supreme Sorceress. Granted, having healing against the Wood Elves is so damn valuable. If they're coming in with Prey of Anathrama and sniping characters, and let's say your Supreme Sorceress gets caught out and sniped, you're probably going to lose the battle. It's no way of healing, but If you have Morathi, she's going to be able to heal with Soul Stealer. She's very quick on Sulafet and definitely does quite a bit of work. But the front line, I don't think you need more elite than this. They do the job, especially if you have some heavy cav as well as some Corsair handbows to pick apart the very lightly armored Wood Elf infantry. Yes, Eternal Guards do have, silver shields, but even still, volume of fire from Corsair handbows supporting your infantry can actually take apart the Eternal Guard pretty quickly. So the heavy cav were pretty good, and I also really like the shade pick. 43, 49 on those guys. They did pretty good, and it's kind of just like an insurance card. If your opponent does go with like a heavy tree build, having the shades is really going to save your butt, because other than that, you're really going to have to rely on Morathi and the Cold Blood Dread Knights to do the job, and I just feel like they wouldn't, because the trees would stand on top of spears and things like that. So I like Professor Pone's army for sure. Eternal Guard in the front line, always a pretty safe pick. The Depot Scouts didn't have too many good targets, but the Wild Riders can definitely do some really good work against Bleak Swords, but they do have to kind of run from the Cold Blood Dread Knights, and I have to be honest, I'm not the most experienced Wood Elf player. I do play them every once in a blue moon, but it's mostly when I play with Orion, and I really don't play a traditional playstyle with them, so it's very different than the standard, I guess, tournament metagame. So anyways, very well played to Professor Pone. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Dark Elf vs Wood Elf game, and we will see you guys next time. Take care.